If you've ever felt a man slowly stop reaching out, not dramatically, not with a fight, just quietly, there's something he noticed that he never told you. He didn't send a long message explaining his reasoning. He didn't have a conversation about what changed. He simply became less available, less warm, less present. And if you were watching closely, you might have caught the exact moment it began. Most women don't. And the reason they miss it isn't carelessness. It's because they were focused on the wrong thing entirely. Here is what I mean by that. When a mature man begins to withdraw, women often search for the emotional cause. Did he feel overwhelmed? Is he afraid of something real? Did something happen in his life? Those are reasonable questions. But they point in the wrong direction. Because a mature man rarely retreats from emotion. What he retreats from is a specific kind of communication pattern, one he has learned through real experience to associate with something that costs him more than it gives. And this is what most women never get to hear. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what that pattern is, why it triggers retreat rather than pursuit in men over a certain age, and what women who keep the attention of mature men do differently. From the very first conversation, a younger man reads ambiguity as excitement. He interprets a delayed response as tension worth pursuing. He experiences mixed signals and thinks, she is a challenge, and he leans in harder. This is not a flaw in younger men. It is simply where they are psychologically. The emotional cost of chasing ambivalence has not yet fully accumulated for them, so the chase itself still feels rewarding. A man who has been through enough cycles of that pattern responds to ambiguity in an entirely different way. He does not experience it as tension. He experiences it as information. That is the core shift that most explanations of mature male behavior completely miss. It is not that he becomes emotionally closed as he gets older. It is that his nervous system has been trained by repetition to recognize a specific set of communication patterns and quietly categorize them. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with the calm efficiency of someone who has simply been here before. Neuroscience has a framework for this called predictive processing, the brain's tendency to build internal models of the world based on accumulated experience, and then use those models to interpret new situations before they fully unfold. In plain terms, it means that a mature man is not just responding to what is happening right now. He is responding to everything that has happened before that looked exactly like this. So when a woman manufactures a little distance to see what he will do, he does not think, she must be busy. His pattern recognition system processes that behavior against everything he has learned. And in many cases, the conclusion arrives before he is even fully conscious of it. Of course, this does not mean that every mature man has identical reactions, or that past experience always leads to accurate readings. Context matters here, and people are genuinely complex. But what remains consistent across this age group is that the threshold for ambiguity tolerance drops significantly. Not because men become rigid, but because they become honest with themselves about what they actually want from a relationship. And what they want, more than almost anything else, is to not have to decode someone. That desire is what changes everything about how they respond to the communication patterns most women have been using their entire dating lives. And it is what we are going to follow through every layer of this video. Now let me describe what this actually looks like from the inside of his experience, because this is where understanding either locks in or slips away. He can't always name what's happening, but something shifts in him, a quiet, almost invisible recalibration. He doesn't get angry, he just gets less interested. And that transition happens faster than you'd expect. Think about 3 specific scenarios that come up again and again in the experiences of men in this age group. The first is manufactured unavailability. A woman who is genuinely available but performs unavailability as a strategy. She waits longer than she needs to before responding. She references plans she did not have. She creates the impression of a full, competing social world as a way of raising her perceived value. A younger man often does not notice the performance. A mature man usually does. Not because he is suspicious by nature, but because he has sat across from enough versions of this pattern to recognize the particular rhythm of it. The responses that come slightly too late. The vague references to other things happening. The way the availability seems to appear and disappear in ways that feel almost calibrated. He notices it. He does not say anything, and something in the quality of his attention begins to shift. The second scenario is what might be called response testing. A woman who withholds warmth or engagement to measure how much effort he will produce in its absence. She pulls back slightly and watches what he does. Will he chase? Will he try harder? Does he need her more than she needs him? Again, a younger man often takes this bait and chases. A mature man reads it as a test, decides he does not want to be in a relationship organized around tests, and quietly reduces his emotional investment. Not in one dramatic moment. Gradually, almost gently. The third is engineered jealousy. Subtle references to other male attention offered not as honest sharing, but as leverage. She mentions someone who reached out. She creates a sense of competition that is supposed to sharpen his focus on her. You might be thinking right now, don't all of these things sometimes work? And honestly, sometimes they do, on some men, for a period of time. But here is what matters. The kind of man these tactics tend to retain is not the kind of man most women ultimately want to keep. The men who respond to these patterns with increased pursuit are often responding to the anxiety the pattern creates, not to genuine attraction. And anxiety-based pursuit does not age well. Mature men, by contrast, have already lived through relationships built on that kind of dynamic. They know exactly where it goes. So now you understand what he detects. But the question that actually haunts women about this experience is not what he noticed. It is why he never said anything. Here's something worth saying plainly. When a mature man goes quiet after mixed signals, he's not punishing you. He's taking you at face value. And that's the part that stings. This is the part that most explanations skip entirely, and it is worth slowing down here for a moment. When a mature man encounters indirect communication or game-playing behavior, he does not typically respond by calling it out, asking for clarification, or expressing hurt. He responds by adjusting his investment. And the reason he does this is not coldness. It is a form of deep respect that operates in a way women rarely recognize as such. He assumes you know what you are doing. That is the thought underneath the silence. If she is manufacturing distance, she must want distance. If she is creating ambiguity, she must prefer ambiguity. He is not going to argue with the signal she is sending. He is going to respond to it honestly. And his honest response to ambiguity is to step back. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as behavior matching, the tendency to mirror the level of investment and clarity offered by a partner. In plainer terms, it means he is giving you exactly what your communication pattern told him you wanted. And because he is doing this based on what he genuinely believes you want, he does not experience his withdrawal as a punishment. He experiences it as a natural calibration. This is why women who use indirect communication with mature men so often find themselves in a confusing position. They send a signal designed to create pursuit. He receives that signal, takes it seriously, and creates exactly the distance the signal seemed to request. She reads his distance as disinterest. He reads her confusion as confirmation. The loop closes in a way neither person intended, and the exit, when it comes, is quiet. Not because he is withholding something from her, but because there is, from his perspective, nothing left to say. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this video? That something had already happened, that a man you were interested in had quietly shifted, and that there was a specific thing he noticed that he never told you. We are now close enough to the full picture that the answer is starting to come into view. But before I give you that final piece, let me show you what happens when the opposite is true. The moment a woman says clearly what she wants, Not aggressively, not desperately, just clearly. Something happens in a mature man that he often can't articulate. But you can see it in how quickly his attention sharpens. This is not poetic language. There is something physiologically real occurring. When the brain is relieved of decoding labor, when it no longer has to hold open the question of what someone actually means, cognitive and emotional resources redirect. A man who has been spending low-level mental energy interpreting signals suddenly has that energy available for something else. Genuine interest in the person in front of him. This is what direct communication does that no amount of manufactured tension can replicate, but it goes further than just relief. Behavioral researchers studying long-term attraction in adults over 40 have consistently noted that clarity signals something specific about a person's emotional development. It suggests she knows her own mind, which is one of the rarest and most compelling qualities a person can possess. In practical terms, this means that when you communicate directly, you are not just removing a barrier to connection. You are actively displaying one of the qualities mature men find most attractive. There is also a third effect, and this is the one that surprises people the most. Direct communication creates a specific kind of early trust that indirect communication structurally prevents. When a woman is clear about what she wants and how she feels, a man can begin to build a model of her that is accurate. He learns who she actually is, rather than managing a constantly shifting picture of who she might be. And for a man who has spent years in relationships where the picture kept shifting, that experience of accuracy is, and I want to use this word carefully, profound. Now you might be thinking, doesn't this remove the mystery? Doesn't directness make a relationship feel less interesting, less charged? And I want to address that directly because it is a legitimate question. The answer is that mystery and ambiguity are not the same thing. Mystery comes from depth, from the sense that there is always more to learn about a person, always another layer to understand. Ambiguity comes from signal confusion, from not knowing what someone actually wants or means. The first creates long-term fascination. The second creates short-term anxiety. Mature men are no longer interested in the anxiety, but they are deeply interested in depth. And nothing reveals depth faster than a woman who communicates with calm, grounded clarity. Here's something worth saying plainly. The instinct to protect yourself in dating isn't irrational. It comes from somewhere real. But a mature man can usually tell the difference between a woman guarding her heart and a woman running a strategy. And he responds to those two things very differently. Women learn indirect communication through experience. Most of the time, that experience includes moments where being too direct, too clear about wanting something, too open about genuine interest, was treated as an invitation for someone to take advantage. The vulnerability was used against them. The openness was read as desperation. The clarity was punished. So indirectness becomes protection. Games become armor. That is not manipulation in its origin. That is adaptation. And I want to be clear about something here, because this matters enormously. When a mature man detects indirect communication, he is not reading it as evil or even as conscious strategy. In most cases, he is simply recognizing it as a communication style that tells him something about where a woman currently is emotionally. A woman who needs to protect herself through indirect communication is, from his perspective, a woman who has not yet decided whether she trusts him. And he understands that. He does not resent it. But he also does not pursue it. Because here is the distinction that changes everything. There is a difference between a woman who is being cautious because genuine trust has not yet been established, and whose behavior, while careful, still points toward honesty, and a woman who is running a calculated strategy designed to manage his perception of her. He can feel that difference. Not always immediately, but usually within the first 2 or 3 meaningful conversations. The woman who is cautious but honest gives him small, clear pieces of herself, enough to work with, enough to feel real. The woman running a strategy gives him managed impressions, And managed impressions, however skillfully constructed, have a particular texture to them. They feel just slightly too controlled, a little too consistent, lacking the kind of small, unexpected moments of realness that human beings cannot plan. A mature man has enough experience to notice that texture, and once he notices it, even if he cannot name it, something in him begins to disengage. When most women think about being direct with a man, they think about telling him how they feel, and that matters. But there's a different kind of directness, quieter, more grounded, that makes a mature man stop and genuinely reconsider the kind of attention he wants to give you. This is the piece of this conversation that most people never reach. Emotional directness, saying, "I enjoy spending time with you. I find you interesting. I would like to see you again," is valuable, and mature men do respond to it positively. It creates warmth. It reduces the decoding burden. It builds the early trust I described earlier. But there is a second form of directness that operates at a deeper level entirely. It is directness about her own standards. This is a woman who communicates, not as an ultimatum, not with anxiety or force, but with calm clarity, what she actually needs from a relationship. She mentions early that she values consistency over grand gestures. She says directly that she does not do well with someone who runs hot and cold. She expresses without apology that she is looking for something real and is not interested in ambiguity about where things are heading. That kind of communication does something to a mature man that emotional directness alone cannot quite replicate. It tells him she knows herself. And self-knowledge, in a partner, is one of the most compelling signals a mature man can encounter. Because the men in this age group have almost universally experienced relationships where the lack of self-knowledge in a partner eventually became the central problem. A woman who did not know what she wanted. A woman whose needs were unclear, even to herself. A woman who changed the terms quietly and never explained why. When a mature man meets a woman who can state her standards calmly and without drama, not as demands but as honest self-expression, his internal experience is something close to recognition. This is a person who is not going to require him to decode her. This is a person with whom a real, legible relationship is possible. And here is the part most women never expect. That directness about standards does not reduce his attraction. It concentrates it. It shifts him from the vague, pleasant interest of early attention into something more deliberate. He begins to think about her differently. She moves from someone he is casually pursuing to someone he is actually considering. The question changes from, "Do I enjoy her company?" to, "Could I build something real with this person?" That is not a small shift. That is the shift. And it happens because she told him, in clear and confident language, exactly who she is and what she needs, and trusted him to respond to that honestly. Which, of course, is exactly what she wanted him to do all along. What we have covered in this video is not a technique. It is not a strategy for managing someone's perception of you. It is a description of how a very specific kind of male psychology actually works, and why the communication patterns that function in one stage of life begin to work against a woman when she carries them into encounters with men who have moved past needing the chase. Here is the single thread that runs through everything we have discussed today. Mature men do not retreat from women who are emotionally open. They retreat from situations where they cannot read the ground beneath their feet. Ambiguity is not attractive to them. It is exhausting. And they have reached the stage in their lives where they are no longer willing to invest deeply in something that feels like a moving target. What draws them in? What holds their attention in a way that builds over time rather than burning out? Is a woman who is clear about her feelings when they exist, about her needs without apology, about who she is without performance. You do not have to share everything immediately. You do not have to manufacture vulnerability or pretend certainty you do not feel. Directness does not mean rawness. It means accuracy. It means letting what is true be visible in the moments when it matters. That capacity, quiet, grounded honesty about yourself, is not something a mature man can easily find. which is exactly why, when he encounters it, he does not let it go. I want to ask you something specific before you leave. Have you ever been direct with a man and had it work better than you expected? Or the opposite? Has playing it safe ever cost you something you actually wanted? Tell me below, because your experience matters here, and I read every comment on this channel. If what we explored today gave you a clearer picture of how mature men actually process connection, then this channel has more of exactly that. On this channel, we look at female psychology from the inside, not as rules to follow, but as genuine understanding to carry with you. And in the next video, I'm going to show you the exact moment a mature man privately decides whether a woman is someone he sees a future with, or someone he enjoys for now. Most women never realize this decision has already been made, and it almost never happens when you think it does.